Afternoon. It feels like it's August, but it's only June, right? Right? It's good to see everybody. I'm gonna call to order the Nashville MTA Board Meeting. And first on our agenda is roll call. Jessica Dobbin.
Present.
Walter Searcy. Present. Mary Griffin.
Present.
All present. Gail Carr-Williams present. Janet Miller is not here today. So we will go forward, and I will ask for approval of the May 26 minutes.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
The minutes go forward. And I have two public comments. First, John Bull. Well, Mr. Bull, if I can just have a point of privilege, we've missed you. You doing okay?
Yes, we're doing well.
You're doing well, okay.
It's been chaotic in my neighborhood, but here we are in all my glory.
Well, it's good to see you. Welcome back.
It's good to be back.
Thank you.
As you all know, I'm a frequent rider, and two comments. Route 52 slides right by the brand-new Nashville Soccer Club Stadium, and I was thinking, 30,000 people in that neighborhood could really impact the 52 routes. That's not the case. There's a large number of people who are soccer fans who are going to the game, but everything's right on time, and that's just delightful. That's a statement to you all about how we all are getting things done, to be sure. It's impressive, it really is. And I don't have a whole lot more to say at this point, except I'm really looking forward to the presentations that are coming up in very short order. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bull. Next, I have Miriam Leibowitz. Well, it's nice to see you, Miriam.
It's nice to see you. I'm here in my new capacity as Commute Concierge Manager with Vanderbilt University. I started there April 25th, and I'm here to say I have actually had a great pleasure of continuing to work with a lot of my old colleagues at WeGo, talking about various commute opportunities and quick ticket and the transition that will eventually happen to bring Vanderbilt onto the electronic validation system, various routes. I sent Denise an email, I think yesterday, about some graffiti at my regular bus stop on White Bridge Road. And I'm actually riding the bus more than ever and rode the bus here today. And just really looking forward to working with y'all in my new capacity and helping to decrease the drive-alone rates in Nashville through the Vanderbilt community and working with all of y'all. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Miriam. But before you leave, can you show me your anchor down?
I haven't learned it yet.
You learned it? Okay.
I'm too new still.
Next time I see you, we'll see your anchor down, all right? Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here for, okay, we do what we do, right? I'm spunky today, I suppose. Okay, next, are there any other public comments? I haven't received any other requests. Any other public comments? Hearing no other public comments, that closes that section of our agenda. Next, Mr. Searcy, I'm going to turn it over to you for operations and finance.
Well, I'm not going to have it long because based upon the board's management seminar of last month, you have determined that procedurally there's another way we can go. And even though I wasn't at the meeting, I concur with that process. It's called a consent, a consent agenda And on our consent agenda, all of the things that we historically have talked about ad nauseum, we are going to attempt to,
You mean that Ed has talked about it?
well, he wasn't here, so I wasn't going to out him. But he has partners in this crime, and we won't out them either. Now, what I'm going to do procedurally, since we need the board to concur with adopting this process, I'm going to ask that one of our members make a motion to agree to the consent agenda and the handling of same.
Mayor, you got it?
I move to adopt the consent agenda process.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Second. So just for purposes of clarification, we have 11 items. Some are action and some are informational items. Are there any items of these 11 that any of you would like to pull out and have a separate discussion about?
None for me.
Yeah, that's the second shoe, yes.
Okay, and if there are none, is there, since I have a motion and a second, is there any discussion?
I wholly agree with the consent agenda process. I think it enables the board to spend more time on discussion of other issues. And this is an organization that is well-trained, is well-versed. We have thankfully seen quite a bit of the operations, and I feel confident in their processes and the people that are in charge of them. So I don't feel that we need to dive into a more micromanagement level on that. And I also know this is a very dedicated board, and this board reads everything given to them. And so therefore, I am fully on board with this, but I want to state that because a consent agenda is, I work for government, but a consent agenda is not something everyone's familiar with. It absolutely doesn't mean that there's no oversight. We will be still reading all of this, and we will state, I know every single person on this board, including Janet, will say, no, I'd like to pull that for discussion. So I thank you.
So just for clarification in language, I think your motion was consent agenda process versus the items on the consent agenda. So okay, Margaret.
So I suggest that since some are for information only, that the motion be amended to say that you approve all items on the agenda that require action by the board. So that specifically, as to those action items, they are approved by the board. Okay. Because like take the I'm looking at the credit line particularly. That is an action item that we need to make sure that we approve that before that goes to council. So it needs to be board approval of any action item. So if you would move board approval of all action items that require board approval on the consent agenda. And then we'll next month, we'll separate out information items versus board approval items.
I'm happy to do so. I had heard that there were two different distinct, and I apologize if I misheard, but the way I heard it was that Mr. Cersei was actually requesting that somebody first do a motion to say we all agreed that this would be our process.
That sounds good.
And so that's kind of where I was on
Okay,
that.
that's
That
fine.
sounds
So
good.
if we could just vote on process, if we can, and this
Yes.
is the question, do we agree to the consent agenda process, just to make certain, I'm
Yes.
certain, and we know what we're voting on. So we've had good discussion on that, and if I can call for the vote for the consent agenda process.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now, Mr. Cersei, I hand it back over to you to finish talking about the consent agenda. And I sort of took that from you, and I got a little ahead of myself, so I apologize.
No problem. does anyone have any objection? Or does anyone have any item on the consent agenda that they would like to reserve for further discussion?
I do not.
Okay. Hearing none, then I'll now entertain a motion to accept today's consent agenda without exception.
I would move to approve all items that would require action by the board, and that we go ahead and then approve those. Thank you.
Second?
Second.
Okay,
It's
any
been
further
moved and
dis-
properly seconded. I'm sorry, go ahead, Madam Chairman.
That's okay, I took it from you. You can take it from me. We share up here.
Yeah, it's been moved and properly seconded
Okay,
that we do this thing, and we do it in the manner as prescribed by our council.
so is there any further discussion? And to further state what Mr. Searcy has already stated, there is a motion and a second, so I will call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is carried as our first consent agenda. I think it was good. Thank you very much. Thanks for this, Steve, thanks for your hard work to put this together.
That's right. And if I had followed Steve's language, we would have been through this thing much
I know,
earlier.
but it's my fault.
It's okay, Walter, I tell my wife the same thing.
Ooh, I'm moving way away from that one. All right, Madam Chairperson, I will return it to you regarding.
Well, actually, you have a couple other things. You have the real estate brokerage services and,
Now, is that under my committee work?
yep,
All right,
we weren't gonna let you off that easy.
all right, well then, I'll snatch it back. And ask, Ms. Rita to lead us in the discussion of the letting of the brokerage services contract.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I am not used to being first. I'm used to following Ed and/or Andy, but I'm sure their feelings are not hurt as you all have worked through this consent agenda process, which I think is really good for the board. So this particular item is very important. It's very important as this board thinks about the growth and expansion of our transit services, particularly around the In Motion and Better Bus Plan that we have out there. Obviously, this board has had an opportunity to go to the Hillsborough Transit Center and have that opening, grand opening, which was exciting. We're all eagerly awaiting the grand opening of the North Nashville Transit Center. But as those two projects are very exciting, they really sort of fell into our lap. A lot of hard work from our CEO, Steve Bland, in, just his community outreach and connections with people, them really wanting to partner with us and approaching us. But now we're sort of at a point where we have to think about the future and what might be out there that doesn't come knocking at our door. And so we've had conversations internally about, how do we navigate that? How do we get the expertise that this particular agency might need in order, again, to grow projects? And so Trey, being our CDO, is going to give a little more detail on how this particular service will definitely impact the work he does. And then we have Denise Richardson with our procurement department, who'll just give this board a summary of the procurement process and how we got here. And then among the three of us, hopefully we can answer any questions that you might have.
You can call us the outfield, because hopefully we'll have everything covered. And that's my only joke.
That might be good.
Good afternoon. As Rita mentioned, we are at a strategic point of emphasis for our agency to continue to identify properties for acquisition, for bus stop improvements and easement services along that as we improve our stop infrastructure, for park and ride lots, and then for transit center projects as well. It's also kind of apparent to all of us that we are in a pretty hot market for real estate and real estate services. So but if we were to see a sign pop up on somebody's lot, and given the federal requirements that we need to walk through to acquire a piece of property, that opportunity is probably well past us. So we really do need some expertise to be able to lean on for identification and acquisition for properties in this market. So we were able to pull together this solicitation. And we had a pre-bid meeting following the release of that, upon which we had 4 firms attend. However, we did only receive one proposal. It was a combination of 2 firms, JLL and SVN, the Genesis Group, actually combined services, JLL being the prime, SVN, the Genesis Group, being a sub, which they are a DBE, combined their proposals together and submitted to us. And just because we got one, I don't want it to understate the quality of the proposal that we received. Our evaluation committee reviewed the proposal and interviewed the combined team, and we came away really impressed with 2 things. Both firms have a really good grasp on the local market, given their portfolios and projects that they've worked on in their past. And then secondly, JLL, being a larger company and having a nationwide footprint, has a public institutions division that has worked on projects funded by the FTA as well. So having that sort of institutional knowledge on how to walk things through the federal process, combined with local strength of both firms, we felt really comfortable moving forward with their proposal. So following negotiations for this task order-based contract, we'll ultimately enter into this. If we were to enter into this agreement, it would be based on hourly rates and commission rates for properties that are acquired, hourly rates for the services of property identification. Those range from $225 per hour for a project manager up to $460 for a principal. And the commission rates range from 2.5% to 3%, depending on the value of the acquisition. And both of those rates have been compared to similar government contracts and deemed within line of what the market rate for those are. Finally, the other means, if we're to enter in a lease for these contracts, there's a 4% commission rate for that, and easement services is a $750 lump sum for those services that we enter into. So in structuring this contract, we're asking for the board to consider a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options and a not to exceed value of $1.5 million. Primarily for property identification and acquisition services, commission fees for properties that close in a lease for purchase agreement will be separately identified and authorized in future board actions with the acquisition of those individual properties. With that, I'll take any questions.
And before we get to those questions, as Trey mentioned, we did have only one proposal. I know the board is often very sensitive to that. And so it might be beneficial, again, for Denise Richardson to just sort of walk through her due diligence that she performed.
Let's hear that first then.
All right. Well, thank you. We advertised the proposal in our customary manner on our website, which I know a lot of people are not accustomed to look at, particularly for professional services. We also advertised it nationally in Transit Talent, which goes out to consulting firms. It does have a real estate indicator on it in case firms are interested, particularly in real estate services. And we advertised it on the B2G business diversity system that does have some codes for firms that provide real estate, property management, facilities management services. And the reason that we included facilities management and property management services in our outreach is because very often they will have site selection, location analysis as part of their portfolio, even though their focus may be facilities or property management. We also sent the RFP directly to 25 firms in the Nashville area that specialize in commercial real estate. And we focused on commercial real estate because firms that are skilled in residential property really don't seem to have the focus that a commercial real estate firm would have, particularly on large commercial leases, which is what we would be looking at. It was, no question, disappointing to only get one proposal as a result of the fairly extensive outreach that we did. However, in talking to the firms that declined to propose, 3 things became apparent very quickly. Number one, Nashville is an extraordinarily hot market right now for commercial real estate. I think if we had been doing this proposal a couple of years forward from now, we might have had a little bit more interest, but right now, the firms are, resource constrained, and this will be a labor-intensive effort. And that's why the contract was structured on a task order basis, so that we could compensate the firms for some searches that may not actually result in an acquisition. However, for a commercial real estate firm, that becomes a risk flag. And so the feedback that I got from several of the firms that I spoke to was they just didn't have the time and the staff time to put into the effort that we were looking for. Also, because we are going to be looking for property throughout the WeGo region, our scope is a little bit undefined, and that fits our needs. The firms are more used to having a specific ask. We need you to find 100,000 square feet in this approximate geographic region. Ours is all over our service area, depending on where our needs are. So that was another risk factor that they identified appropriate for them, but again, we can't tailor our solicitation to be that specific at this time because we're looking at the broader plan. The other issue that was a concern for the firms was many of them had not had experience on federally funded property acquisition. The rules are extensive and very, very specific, and we included them in the RFP so that people who were responding to the RFP understood upfront what they would be asked to document and what they would be asked to do in the course of a property acquisition. A number of firms indicated that they saw that as a risk factor, and they felt as though that could be a barrier to closing a deal. And as one principal of a large, well-known firm said to me, that they make money based on closing deals. This project, this contract, may not result in 100% closure of deals, and that's why they chose to pass, which I respect and I understand. And again, as Trey said, the fact that we got one proposal should not in any way diminish the quality of the proposal we received, particularly when the two firms that had originally been separately proposing decided to join together. And I will say that the sum of the whole and the strength of the whole was much greater than the individual parts. So it's a very strong proposal that I think will do well for us. And also, the other thing that is economically attractive about the proposal is that they proposed a 1.5% escalation factor over the term of the contract, which in this market with competing for talent was extraordinarily favorable to us.
What is the share between the two groups?
75% JLL, 25% SVN, which may flip depending on the individual task. That's overall of the contract. Again, this is going to be a task-specific assignment, so that there may be instances where that dynamic flips with SVN in the lead on the task and JLL as the support. So overall contract is 75-25, but we could see that shift and change depending on the individual tasks.
Now, SVM and Genesis, are they the same?
Yes, that's a combined name. Yes, SV and Genesis Group. Carnell Scruggs is the principal.
Yeah, yes. Carnell and I worked on the Industrial Development Board together for about 8 years. Yeah. When I saw that they were being considered and subsequently now being recommended as part of the group, I had to decide whether I should recuse myself, but I don't see any reason I should. Yeah.
Walter, are you just disclosing is all you need to do?
Yeah. All right, any other questions for
Mr. Chair, the only thing I would add is because of her unique background, I knew Janet would be away, and I did ask her about it. She checked within her firm. And first of all, the firms, as Denise and Trey and Rita have indicated, are very well regarded, and the rates they're proposing are very much in line with industry standards.
And they are very well known in the government space, and in fact, it's in the news all the time that they manage all of the state of Tennessee property, so, you know, they definitely know this area. The state of Tennessee is selling quite a bit of property, so I would add that.
And I assume since they work with the state, they understand federal guidelines also.
One must, yes.
One must, indeed. All right, thank you. Well, with no further questions, I'll entertain a motion to recommend this to the board.
I make a motion to recommend the board provide the CEO, the authority to enter into a contract with JLL to provide real property acquisition services, not to exceed $1.5 million.
Is there a second?
I need to ask a question of
Sure.
council. Is it imperative to include the extensions in this motion?
I think, Jessica, you could just say, you move that the board approve the staff recommendation regarding this, right, and that should take care of everything that's in there.
Okay, I make a motion that the board approve this staff recommendation for this particular action item.
Move to second.
There's a motion and there's a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I really am excited to see where this can take WeGo and hopefully progress the better bus network and the ability of this public transit agency to provide better services and improve and enhance services and provide dignity to everything that we do for our riders. Thank you.
Actually, just one more item to expand on what Jessica said. So this was issued as a joint procurement between the MTA and RTA, and we're going to be taking this to the RTA board in the upcoming month as well. So Trey indicated one of the priority areas is park and ride facilities, and that is particularly acute in the outlying counties.
Great.
Well, then it's doubly exciting. Thank you.
So Jessica, you can come to the RTA meeting and do public comment.
You got it.
Double. It's okay. So, any other comments?
One more, I'm sorry. Thank you so much to Trey and Rita Roberts and Denise Richardson for your hard work and going through this process and putting out the RFP and having the meetings with the firms and hosting the procurement panel and all that to give us this great information. So I appreciate your work on that. Thanks.
Was a good job. Well done. Okay, anything further? It's great. Okay, I'm calling for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, and this is exciting to have someone out looking actively for our property and understanding our needs, our physical facility needs. So awesome, great job. Mr. Searcy, you still on?
I'm still on. We'll have the Dbe Program update by Ms. Johnson. Is she with us today?
You're skipping me already, Mr. Searcy?
Am I skip? Andy, did I skip you already? Has this become a pattern? You know, the bus audit, yes. The bus audit. And Carl, I think,
All right.
it's on your shoulders today, is that right?
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll give a quick intro. This is the 2021 Annual Maintenance Bus Audit. So we're here today to just kind of give you an overview of our maintenance program. We do have a third party to come in who does a audit on our maintenance program, but we're also taking a look at our initiatives and what the future looks like. As you guys know, this is a recurring item that we come back to you guys each year for. So I'm going to kick this over to Carl Rokos, our Director of Maintenance, to kind of go through that. So thank you.
All righty. Hello. we're going to go over the annual maintenance audit and what our initiatives are moving forward. And, you know, there are a few things that we go over as far as performance and goals for fleet maintenance. And, you know, with respect to safety, you know, we don't cut any corners in that regard. We make sure that any bus that goes out is safe. And if there's a reported defect, we get it traded out immediately. With respect to overall condition, you know, we have a third party come in and do condition audits. And we also have internal audits that we do, you know, with our supervisors. So we ensure that, you know, the fleet condition is up to where we need to have it. For service reliability, Andy reports every month on, you know, how well we perform, and that's trending the right way, although we have trended up a little bit, but we're also, you know, performing 107%, I believe, of what we had in the past. And then finally, there's fleet appearance, and, you know, that's basically repainting buses and making sure that, you know, what you all see, our customers, you know, that's very appealing to you. Since 2015, this audit's been performed. There are several areas they look at, and, you know, what we want to do is make sure that we perform well, and over time, we improve on the scoring that we have. Now, you know, the graph that you're seeing in front of you there, that's the trends that since the audit began until current. And what we've done is we track that, and, you know, the blue stuff represents B-level defects. That's something that, you know, it can be repaired immediately, or we can defer it to another day. And if it's an A-level defect, that's something that would take it out of service immediately. That could be a headlight out or a wiper blade that's bad, something like that.
Give us an example of a B defect that we would continue to operate the vehicle.
A marker light that's out, you know, of a five cluster rear marker light assembly, one of those being out, that sort of thing. You know, one thing that I'll note, and, you know, that's, you know, good for us is that, you know, we didn't have any infusion of any new buses this year. And that's a really good thing, in that the trend's going this way. And, you know, this is the first year that we had an average A-level defect of less than one defect found for the entire audit. And they're doing 24 buses, and actually 16 buses and 8 cutaway buses. So, you know, that's a pretty significant reduction in the amount of A-level defects. So what you're looking at right here is, this is what Andy reports on every month, and you'll see that, you know, we in what is it, 2015, we were about 0.2 per 100,000, 1,000 trips. And then in 2019, when right before we did a service reduction, you know, we were way up there, in the 0.6 range. And then we had service reductions, and then COVID hit, and we really bottomed out at that point. And after we had, you know, the increased service levels, we're still, you know, staying very low. We've ticked up a little bit, but, you know, an acceptable level of tick up.
Just to amplify Carl's comments here on this last one, the lower the number, the better.
Yeah.
So these, where you saw that spike in 2019, was, you'll recall, some of the real issues we had. We actually had to pull back service to some extent because of lack of available fleet. So generally, our overall missed trip, our overall trip completion percentage goal is 99.5%. And they've been operating about 99.7, 99.8, even since we added more service. And usually we like to see the maintenance related at half or a little less than half of that. So where Carl's talking about keeping it below that 0.2, that basically means you're missing 2 trips out of 1,000. either because of a breakdown in service or because there's just not enough buses to make the line.
Okay, moving on to fleet appearance and, the status of repaints or refresh or however you want to talk about it. Another element of this program is, where we're at and where we're going to go. And currently, we've got 114 buses, that are heavy duty that have been painted, whether it be through a new bus purchase or repainting them ourselves. We could rebrand them, we could re-image them, or we could actually do a decal or a vinyl wrap that imitates our logo or our layout. And that we'll bring it in, it'll be white, they'll wrap it and it'll be purple.
If I may, on this particular slide, one of the things we're trying to do is, a lot of the buses out there, you see the WeGo branding, but you also see the white buses with the blue stripe. Currently, we have a good majority of our fleet are already at that WeGo painted scheme. And so by the end of this year, we shouldn't see any more of those white buses. And then moving forward, part of our development plans for maintenance is to introduce kind of like a midlife program, overhaul program where we're going to continue doing those painting to ensure that they are looking crisp and clean for those visual cosmetics for that first impression for our customers.
Yeah, and that'll occur at say 6-7 years. And other times where that'll, come up is to where if there's an accident where there's some significant body damage, we'll refresh it then versus waiting.
Question, will this eliminate the advertising like bail bonds, or it will not though?
No.
Right, just to remind us.
Yeah. What you're seeing on this chart, so right now, the gray are what we call sponsor wrap. So that would be the ad buses. You're starting to see more through a lot of Renuka's efforts, more in that green category where we're wrapping buses to promote Quick Ticket or WeGocation or some other initiative that we might have. So even though this shows all purple painted buses, we would still expect advertising wrapped buses at whatever level. They generally run, I think, in the 20 to 25 range. So that's probably a consistent piece. And then the only thing I would add to that is this is a reflection of our heavy-duty transit coach fleet. So I don't want anybody coming back, when that line is all purple saying, Carl and Andy, you lied to me. I saw a white Walter Road on a white bus. The access vans, because of the shorter lifespan, rather than going through repaint, and we really count on the replacements. And right now with the supply chain issues we're having, that kind of keeps moving back and back and back. So this focuses on the articulated buses and the 40-foot coaches.
Okay, so, some of the accomplishments and challenges that we have, the current apprentices that we have, there are 2 of them, and they've completed their first year of apprenticeship. They've done very well.
This is maintenance apprenticeships.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we intend on trying to move that to 4 this next year, 4 to 6. Still under discussion, but, at least 4. And, we've recognized that the individual buses individual subfleets need to have individual checklists. In other words, when, before Bill Miller, we had a generic checklist of, here's a bus, here's a checklist, do the inspection. Well, now we've refined that to where by each subfleet, we have a definitive checklist. And this is also a living document in that we can make adjustments to that checklist to, repair areas that we see, deficiencies in. We've also had employee engagement meetings, and that's with supervisors and with the floor people, the folks that work on buses, service buses, clean buses. They've been going very well. That gives us an opportunity to see what their concerns are, and also for us to display to them or communicate to them, how we or what we have going on in regards to initiatives or other items, safety initiatives per se.
Where did the apprentices come from? Are they directly out of high school? Are they out of other occupational groups?
The two we currently have were a repairman. In other words, they've done a career progression. We look both internally and externally.
Yeah, to add on to that, our apprenticeship program currently is, we have internals folks, but I think the long-term strategy is to, hey, are you interested in proceeding into a mechanic career, and identifying individuals, high school and different career paths that may be interested in kind of stepping through the door. And so that might be an item that we can come back to you guys down the road when we have more material and we can kind of expand on those thoughts and give you guys some more discussion.
The technician headcounts, that's a good segue. It's challenging. It's challenging to hire a mechanic, train a mechanic, and keep a mechanic, for any amount of time, duration time. And, that's a challenge, and we're up to the task, but, we also recognize the fact that we need to, look elsewhere, whether it be high school or junior college, and bring those folks in to an apprenticeship program. And then, the other thing that I wanted to bring up was, our maintenance software is antiquated, it's out of date, and it needs to be replaced. I mean, the software that I used to use at a previous place, I could run a report on productivity for a mechanic that said, here's the mechanic, here's the date range, click. Here, you have to go to ADP, and then you have to go to Turley and merge them together, and yeah, it's a challenge, so.
Well, what do we need to do to overcome this?
So I'll speak on that. We're currently going to be bringing to the board, if it hasn't already, but we're bringing a proposal in hiring a consultant to kind of help us identify what the needs are for an enterprise asset management system. And once we get to a place where, okay, this is a tool that's going to help us with business decisions, we'll circle back with you and seek out board decision and direction for that.
What do you think the timeline is on that?
So that RFP should be coming out. I think it actually might be in this packet, but within the next month or two.
It's in the capital plan Felix is going to be talking about.
There you go. Okay. Next slide.
Yeah. So next steps, one thing we want to do is we want to improve the PM follow-up process, and that goes hand in hand with not having enough people. We don't defer on safety, but we defer on minor things. And, once we get folks in, we'll improve that process and basically get it done. And then, and improving the retention and recruiting efforts. For instance, today, there's a barbecue going on at a community college, Nashville Community College, and we sent, an HR recruiter there just to get our name out there, if nothing else. Implementing campaigns. We already do an AC campaign twice a year, but there are other initiatives like doing a coolant hose campaign to replace stuff and that sort of thing, to make sure that, our fleet is in good working order and we don't have breakdowns on the road. And then, the design and procurement of an asset management system to help with us, how to make decisions. And then targets for next year, make gains in hiring an apprentice. That goes with, we need to get out and recruit more often and better. Sustain the number of defects at a below one level. In other words, our target is wanting to be below one. And currently, keeping the B defects where they're at. We would always like to have them lower, but, with the aged fleet and knowing that there's buses being replaced, I suspect that this year's audit will remain in the same neighborhood. And then, maintain the current levels of service reliability, and that we don't miss trips because a bus breaks down. And then finally, the elimination of all the white buses. And are there any questions?
That sounds a little discriminatory, doesn't it? Get rid of
Blue stripes, yeah.
All right, that's acceptable.
I do have a question. So your auditors, do they look at the entire fleet or,
It's a 10%, like a small percentage of,
okay, are those chosen randomly or do you,
yes.
they are, okay.
The consultant, we give them the entire fleet list and they do random selection. It is stratified between the heavy-duty coaches and the access fleet, as Carl mentioned.
Yeah, 16 heavy-duty buses, whether Artex and 40-footers, and then cutaways, 6 of them. Eight. Yes, 8 of them, sorry.
I have a question. Besides us regularly coming to see exactly what you do whenever there's some major new initiative, and I really appreciated going and just having that really detailed tour from you. What else could we do, if anything? You know, what else might you need from the board? I appreciate the work y'all do. Having ridden the bus, you know, what you've described, you know, this is some of the meat of, you know, what this company does. And, you know, I very much appreciate what you all do and do in more open circumstances in a big garage and, you know, all of that. Is there anything that you would like us to assist you all with?
So one thing is, you guys know, I think last month I was coming in with a bunch of bus procurements. So keeping our fleet age at a healthy amount, so that way we're not having old and beat up vehicles. Because what happens is our mechanics get tired of trying to keep up on those wear and tear of the vehicles as they continue to age. The other thing is, as we kind of come to you guys, not only for vehicle procurements, but for you know, software and technology recommendations to kind of help us with our business decisions, and being able to take, you know, some analytical approaches on our maintenance program, that'll also be a big help. So I think, you know, future discussions are definitely going to be warranted, and when we come back, be open-minded to what we're recommending.
Carl, are you sure you don't have anything? I know, Andy, it's really nice for you to give the pretty answer. Carl, you got anything? That was very nice, Andy, thank you.
I think that Andy summed it up very well.
Good job, Carl. Okay, we do want to hear, though, from all of you if there are things that we can do as the board. Okay, and again, we appreciate everything. Yeah, exactly. If we could, if we do know if people have small businesses, but to that point, if you have a job description and you would like us to help spread it out to different populations, you know, at high schools or at community colleges, et cetera, you know, please make sure that we get those. We do know a few people, some of us, you know, all of us, but we're happy. We're also believers, you know, in what WeGo does as well. So I appreciate everything, and exactly what, you know, Jessica said as well. I know a lot of hard work goes into contracting and all of the work that you all do, so thank you.
We're good.
Any other questions?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Great work on getting those Class A and Class B findings all the way down. I feel like it might be too far beyond the pale to get to 0, but I think getting into below 1.0 for the Class A is really good. So congratulations on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And generally, TRC, our contractor, because they do these all over the country, and they'd say, we're in a good range, but sort of best in class, you're in that 4 to 5 total per bus kind of average, you know, and to Carl's point, keeping below 1 on the A's.
Great.
Anything else? Great job.
Thank you.
Not easy work, but anything else for anybody? Thank you all. If I can just make a quick change to our agenda right now. We have a guest here that I want to introduce, and I'm so excited that he is here. He's like, you know, a hero, one of our Nashville heroes, and has doing work to make Nashville healthier and better and safer, and we're just so grateful that you're here with us today. Dr. Gil Wright from the Metro Nashville Health Department. You know, Dr. Wright has been a tremendous partner to He's just been hanging with us, teaching us, helping us keep our passengers and our ridership safe, and our staff safe, and our drivers safe. And we truly, truly appreciate your partnership and your generosity of knowledge and help all the time. So thank you so much. And thanks for being here today. I think you have something you want to share with us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. During COVID, we found that WEGO was a great partner. They were really looking out for the population of the community, their riders, as well as the staff and drivers of buses and all of the people that work with and for WEGO. And we recently had a celebration of individuals that contributed a lot during COVID, and WEGO was one of those. So I'm here today to present this award or recognition. I guess it's not really an award. We're all getting through this. But over the last 2.5 years, it's been outstanding partnership. We look to continue that where we can, and appreciate all the work that's gone on and into this from WEGO. So for your outstanding contribution in our fight against COVID-19, I'd like to, from behalf of the Metro Public Health Department, present this to WEGO.
Oh, thank you. And it's so nice that Nick Odom would accept this. I know you have been the leader for MTA WEGO in keeping everyone safe. And I just want to say, and I'm certain everybody else has something else to say to you too, thank you for your leadership. And thank you for your persistence. And I know at times that people are like, no, maybe, yes, maybe, but just really grateful for you being the leader in this most trying time. And I think everybody in here will say that as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, if I could just add a couple of remarks. To Dr. Wright's credit and everyone at Metro Public Health, they started with us on this when it was just sort of one of those things in China that might someday become something. So frankly, they were reviewing our hygienic practices and working with our staff and talking about some of these issues long before it, for lack of a better word, hit the fan in 2020. And as a result, when we would jump on, when it did become at crisis levels, and we would jump on national calls with Federal Transit, our trade associations, folks like Nick were actually able to give information to cities like New York about what was going on off of what folks like Dr. Wright had been able to share with us prior to that. So we really became recognized as kind of a national leader on the front end. You know, everybody finally caught up, but thanks to Dr. Wright, his staff, certainly to Nick and all of our folks, we were able to kind of get at least a little bit of a jump on this thing. So I'm very appreciative of your efforts, Dr. Wright.
Amen.
We're such leaders. I love it. We are such leaders. And it's really an honor that you would come here, Dr. Wright, and give this award. And I know you're busy and you're out doing more things now. I'm certain there's something else on the horizon that you must go take care of. But the fact that you will honor MTA WEGO like this today is truly, truly an honor for all of us. And I love how you keep our city safe. Very much. Anybody else have anything before we conclude? Well, thank you for being here. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting if you like.
I have to do a board meeting myself.
Oh. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Searcy, I'll throw it
Now-
back over to you.
Now the DB update.
There we go.
Yes.
Good afternoon, board members, colleagues, and attendees. I am Rachel Johnson, the Procurement Business Diversity Manager for WEGO Public Transit. Today, I will be bringing you updates to our DBE program. The federally mandated Disadvantaged Business Program is a program that is required for agencies that receive $250,000 or more in grant funds for operating and capital expenses. The DBE program is basically an SOP for our agency that outlines our adapted practices to achieve the objectives of the program. The key objectives of the program are to ensure non-discrimination and to remove barriers for disadvantaged business enterprises, to create a level playing field for those companies to compete fairly in those federally assisted contracts, to ensure eligible firms are given the opportunity to participate as DBE certified contractors, to promote the use of DBEs on all federally assisted subcontracting or contracting opportunities, and to assist in the development of these DBEs and offer technical assistance in proposal writing and essential things that businesses need to know to run a successful establishment. One of the first updates to the DBE program is monitoring. We have implemented new software, B2G Now, that allows us to be more efficient in monitoring the DBE commitments and achievements on our contracts. The software has improved our certification process by making it paperless and also gives us the opportunity to have vendors register directly with our company as vendors. We have completely automated those processes and eliminated paper all the way. Also, we are monitoring prompt payments. That's making sure that these contractors are being paid on time, because that is essential to running a successful business. And some of these businesses need to be paid on time so that they can continue operations. And those are just a few of the benefits of our new system. The second update to the DBE program is the Dbe Liaison. Mr. Cersei, would you like to take a guess on who that might be?
Well, I know she's wearing purple. And she's actually addressing us at the moment.
Thank you. You've won. Your prize is outside behind door number 1, so you'll get that later. And I am honored to serve as the Dbe Liaison and to oversee the Dbe program and to be an advocate for disadvantaged businesses. Lastly are the regulatory updates. We have, with prompt payment, reduced the time that primes are to pay subs from 30 days to 15. We need to get them paid quickly. It's up to us to pay our primes, and that primes need to pay the subs within 15 days of receiving payment from us. Also, with prompt payment, we've adopted enforcements that echo our default enforcements of the contract. So that if the payments aren't paid promptly, we send a notice. If it's not cured, you're in default. We have elected not to hold retainage from primes and prohibit primes from holding retainage from the subs. If the work is done and it's done successfully, we want them to be paid. We are also crafting a small business program for subcontracts under $250,000 to be awarded to small minority and woman-owned businesses. We'll work with the finance and the procurement department to select those projects if there's a market within the disadvantaged business community where those vendors have the opportunity to bid on those projects, and we will not publicly release them to all large firms. TDOT has also provided certification appeals language, which is related to denials of certification or decertifications, and that information has been updated correctly in our policies. Since becoming more intentionally in the diversity program, we have increased our spend in the first year with disadvantaged business enterprises to 20% compared to our previous 3-year average of 6%. Of that 20% to diverse businesses, 10% have been awarded directly to prime contractors that are disadvantaged business enterprises. Outside of DBE certifications, in the last 12 months, we've spent $2.7 million with small, minority, and woman-owned businesses. Of that amount, nearly $700,000 have been spent with those businesses within the Nashville community. And over 1.7 of that amount, $1.7 million of that amount have been spent with business within the state of Tennessee that are small minority and woman-owned businesses. This is a comparison and it's not a celebration. We still have a lot of work to do, and we will continue to do our part to level the playing field for social and economic equality within this market. With the support of our wonderful CEO and our illustrious board members, we will make an impact in these communities. We will continue to keep the board updated and seek guidance as we strive to develop a more robust business diversity program. If there are no questions, that concludes my presentation.
Well, this illustrious board member, we're just going to take that today. Thanks you very much for the report, and it's good to sort of see our progress. And so I do have one question. When a sub is not paid timely, how do you manage that with who should have paid them?
In the system, they are able to, with this system, the primes go in and report the amount that we pay them.
Right.
They report the amount that they pay their subs. Their subs must confirm or dispute that payment. So they have the option to say, this is not the correct amount, or I was not paid within 30 days. We really leave it up to the prime and the sub to figure this out and get it remedied.
But you just keep it for
But we
record
keep
to know?
track.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
There is recourse in the regulation. We do run into an issue for us to, for lack of a better word, work around the prime if that becomes a problem. But my sense is you haven't had to do that yet, Rachel?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's hope not.
Yeah.
I know you said it wasn't a celebration, it's just benchmarking, but I think going from 6% to 20% is significant and maybe should be celebrated in some way. So thank you for that wonderful presentation, Rachel.
Thank you, Jessica.
As they say in the church, amen.
That was very well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cersey, I think you have been busy today, even with the consent agenda.
Right.
That's good.
Right. All right, yes. Thank goodness the nice committees comes into play.
Absolutely. So thank you, Mr. Cersey. Ms. Griffin, are you going to handle the nice committee in Ms. Miller's absence?
Absolutely. Madam Chair, whenever you're ready.
I am ready if you're ready. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And so Steve Bland, our illustrious CEO, will be speaking next. So let's try to keep it brief, Steve. Let's keep it moving.
I think it's an award or not a recognition or vice versa. I will try to keep it brief, both out of respect for the length of the agenda, the fact that this is about your third visit with this budget in the past few months, and I could not do the justice to it that Mr. Oliphant could. He is appropriately out of town getting ready for his daughter's wedding this weekend, so we wish Ed and his family all the best. Before you have, we have the proposed FY 22-23 operating budget, $102,311,745. This is the first time that MTA has broken the $100 million mark. It factors in all of our known revenue sources, represents our best projections in terms of expense categories, but as you know, it's a very volatile market. I think of note for passengers in particular, it does allow us to keep our fare structures stable for the upcoming fiscal year. It supports a full year of the service we recently improved in this past year under the Better Bus and City Transportation Plan programs, and allows us to initiate the early phases of our next phase of Better Bus. So ultimately, when this next phase is implemented toward the end of the fiscal year, we will end up being at about 115% of our pre-pandemic service levels. If you go to the next slide. This gives you kind of an overview. You all heard that Metro Council adopted budget earlier this week. You'll probably recall us reporting last month that the mayor's budget proposal recommended that we be increased by about $10 million to $62,610,900 from Metro. This had honored our full baseline request plus our full investment request to move into that next phase of Better Bus. In the budget that council ultimately acted on, there was an amendment introduced that was passed. A number of departments, in recognition of some financial challenges that Metro schools were having, a number of departments took a bit of a haircut. That included WeGo. So ultimately the appropriation recommended by the mayor was reduced by $1 million. That still put us over $9 million in increase. So ultimately that came down to $61,610,900. We had several council members very eloquently argue in defense of WeGo. In fact, actually introduced amendments that ultimately were not successful to even increase above what the mayor had recommended. When the Budget and Finance Chair asked me to respond to what this really meant, I was clear to say that long-term, we still need to see that funding increase if we're going to continue to pursue what we have in the in-motion plan. But frankly, because some of the service expansion relies on fleet deliveries that aren't going to happen until about the first of the year, we could absorb that $1 million reduction by simply deferring some of the service expansion to April instead of October. So ultimately, that did pass. This slide, you can see sort of where we've been and where we need to be with the Better Bus additions from Metro. So we asked for a little bit last year, a little bit more this year. We're going to start to take bigger hits over the next 3 years as we get more of that fleet in. Next slide, please. This shows the trends in our overall operating budget over the past 5 years. You see substantial increases in the operating budget, recognizing growth in service levels and sort of ups and downs in our cost per hour of service. As Ed's reported in prior meetings, we do tend to focus on the cost per service hour because I'd be pleased to see the budget double if it means that our service is doubled or tripled. So we want to make sure that most of that money is getting focused back into the service that we have on the street. Obviously, the large increase that we see in budget going into 22-23, coming out of 21-22, is largely due to the Better Bus service expansion, where you kind of saw a big leap in that cost per hour of services when we did the pandemic-related service hours reduction. So we were spreading overhead over fewer service hours. You saw that flatten out this fiscal year as we put that service back. And you see it increase going into next year for a number of factors that I'd like to go into very briefly. Next slide, please. So just really quickly, of course, on everybody's mind, a lot of these are going to be very common issues that you can see in your own lives or hear about on the news every night. General inflation, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that for the 12 months up through May of 2022, annual inflation was running at about 8.6%, about 4 times the levels that we've seen over the last 5 years or so. So certainly a huge impact on our budget number. Fuel making up a significant chunk of our budget. We are budgeting an increase in fuel expense, not total fuel expense, but an increase in fuel expense of $4.5 million next year. So that is just about 4% of the overall budget. Again, we'll see staffing increases, hopefully, right, Andy? As a result of Better Bus expansion, as we put more service out, we will be compensating more operators. And we also expect in the current labor market, we will be doing expanded efforts, and some of those efforts will cost us something in terms of employee attraction and retention. Carl alluded to the supply chain issues in his part of the presentation. Obviously, just basic economics say if there's a limited supply and a great deal of demand for things like bus parts, those prices go up. But in addition, the extensive delay we've seen in the delivery of our body-on-chassis vehicles for access service means we're operating much older vehicles, which require a much higher level of maintenance activity and expense. And I would put these last two into the category of good news as we continue to expand our transit infrastructure, as Rita and Denise and Trey reported with our real estate services. We're rapidly approaching commemoration of our 250th bus shelter. We opened up the Hillsborough Transit Center. We'll be starting construction on North Nashville. We need to expand the number of staff we have associated maintaining those assets. So that's reflected in here. And the other piece of good news is we continue to see ridership return. We are anticipating that passenger revenue will be up about 50% next year over this year. Next slide. So let me just close on some factors moving forward. You know, we are pleased to present that we're recommending a balanced budget, stable budget, one that allows us to keep fare levels constant, one that allows us to do some increases in service over the next year, and to pursue a lot of the initiatives that we've talked about elsewhere in this meeting. Some of the things, though, that as we look into the next few years going forward, obviously, we've been very fortunate to have access to the pandemic relief funding provided by the federal government early in the pandemic. That is a diminishing resource. We expect it to be fully depleted by the end of fiscal year 2024. To say we're in kind of a volatile market right now in a whole lot of sectors is an understatement, so we'll continue to monitor those closely. We've got probably another year or so where we can really focus our federal capital money in our capital budget. And after that, with the depletion of the pandemic relief money, we will have to go back to a phase where we're putting a lot of those monies back to underwrite our operating budget. Looking to see continued recovery and ultimately growth in ridership. And then I think Felix will touch on in the capital piece. We saw a nice bump in our federal formula funds with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the new infrastructure bill. That may be tempered somewhat starting in federal fiscal year 2024 when they use the 2020 census data, which kind of drives Nashville into a larger metropolitan area category. So that's something that we have to be looking at. And again, we're very appreciative of the funding that we're getting from the mayor, from the council, and all of Metro, but it's an unpredictable resource. You know, we can't really, I'm not going to jump on Jessica's bandwagon necessarily, but maybe I will tee her up by saying, you know, without having that dedicated funding source, it's very difficult for us to know from one year to the next what the spending priorities at the Metro level will be. So, Madam Chair, unless there are any questions, or I'm happy to address any questions from the board. Otherwise, staff recommends approval of the budget as presented by Mr. Oliphant.
Any questions for Steve? I just want to say I know how hard this budget cycle is, and Steve stayed steadfast at Metro Council in the budget hearing this week and any other time that they have asked him to be there, and continues to provide such quality and exceptional leadership to make certain MTA has all that it needs in an environment that we compete in. So thank you so much, Steve. And your presentation today made it a little easier for us to understand, but also to understand the challenges in front of you all and us. And you all and us are actually the same, but we realize that. But thank you so much for your leadership and Ed's leadership.
Thank you.
So I don't have a question, but I do have a few comments.
Sure.
if I
You
might
may.
take the liberty.
Please.
Apparently I'm going to be Jessica today. So dedicated funding, I know she won't mind. She won't mind. Yeah, this really does bring to mind that dedicated funding is it's imperative. You know, it's no longer 5 years out that we need it. It's not 10 years out that we need it. I'm kind of surprising myself that I'm the one that's going here. But we've got to have responsible budget planning, and that includes future planning, that includes having Metro Council and the mayor's office recognize that you don't get buses in 6 months, that you don't make plans year by year, and that we shouldn't be lumped in with all the other agencies. You know, we can't do responsible budget planning if every agency isn't doing responsible budget planning, including strategic planning. And, you know, transportation is really a basic necessity for many, many people. It's essential for their employment, for basic independence. It's ecologically sound. It's imperative to our traffic in Nashville. They had to pass a law about potholes. You know, there's too many cars. I think that might be a sign, right? Here's your sign. It's imperative to safety, accidents, people being run over. You know, how much road work that other people have to pay for. We're saving them money. And if somebody needs me to, you know, go somewhere and join with a few other people on the board and describe all these things, I'm happy to do so, because I don't think it's okay. I don't want to be in a Jello wrestling match with kids, education. That's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous because then, we're put in this position of people trying to say it's either or. It's not. It's both and. The discussions that we're hearing about the budget have got to go to, the basic necessities of real people. There's a lot of people that rely on us. And so I do want to put that on the record because the time's now. The time is absolutely now and certainly before 2024. Thanks for giving me a date, right? But y'all go ahead and put those talking points together because I want this to happen. I don't want to be, it's not fair to the same kids that ride our buses. It's not. And I will say a personal thing about that. One of my daughter's classmates was the high school student that was killed, having to walk all the way across from Hume Fogg to get to ride a bus with me. I feel very, very passionately about that. And again, it's not about not giving enough money to the schools, but I will say that every department needs to do their own budgeting, needs to see where money can be taken away, all of that. But we need to all be talking to each other and coordinating. The budget is across all departments. So, that if y'all will give us some talking points on some of what I've described, that would be incredibly helpful because the time is definitely now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Very well stated and passionately stated. Thank you. Anyone else?
Can I tag on? I mean, I've been queued up twice now, and my name has been mentioned. I can't not say anything. But Ms. Griffin, you did say an enormous amount in one long monologue, so thank you for that. It was great. I just want to add that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. And funding transit is possibly a tree under whose shade I may not ever sit, because these projects do not get built in a year or a couple of months. To your point, like we can't just order a bus and get it in 6 months. It takes time. I want to say that one of the things that this budget cycle indicates to me is that this agency will continue to face the roller coaster and the stress that comes along with being dependent upon the as you so eloquently said, the Jello wrestling match that happens year after year. And if we cannot count on a base level of funding, how can we build a better and bigger future in our mobility infrastructure? It will never happen. And I want to say one last thing about this stressful roller coaster of budgeting and funding, that one of the outcomes is it breeds distrust in the ridership. If one year we can provide excellent, frequent, longer service hours, and the next year we can't because we've been cut at the knees by our funding, then the riders will go somewhere else and they may not return when we're able to provide that service again with that funding when it returns. So those are my comments. Thank you so much, Mary. I love that you're so passionate about it. I love being on this board, and I appreciate being able to say those comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Searcy, anything?
Dare not add anything.
I know. I understand, Feel like, we sit back and look
Great
at
stuff.
Yes. Very good. Thank you so much. The budget does bring about this kind of passion and these kind of conversations, and being on this board for a little bit of time, it's this conversation just needs to be louder and louder. So thank you very much. So do we have a motion and a second for approval or we're good? We're good, huh? I thought so. Okay, so if that's a recommendation, of the committee to adopt the budget?
Yes, the committee recommends the board adopt the fiscal year 2023 budget as presented, not by me, but by the staff.
So being a committee, it does not require a second. So any further comments, any further conversation? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Bland, you have a budget. Thank you.
Ed's daughter can get married now.
Now she can get married, because this was gonna really make the difference, right?
The next item, may I?
No, yes, you
Okay,
may.
thank you. The next item for the NICE committee is the topic of the adoption of the capital investment plan. And our Director of Planning will be speaking, Felix Castrodad.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I apologize for giving you the longest item. I trust that you read all 18 pages of it, so I'm just going to hit the highlights with my slides during this presentation in the light of, trying to keep it short. But we have before you the proposed fiscal years 2023 through 2027 capital investment plan for MTA. I'll just start by saying that it is a balanced plan.
I'm sorry, are we supposed to be seeing different slides?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for the reminder. Thank you. So it is a balanced plan. We are proposing $46.7 million for fiscal year 23, which is the first year of the plan, and a total of $261.7 million for the life of the plan. As a reminder, this is a multi-year plan. It's a 5-year plan. It prioritizes the capital projects. It also assigns funding and a timeline for those for the implementation of those projects. We place particular focus on the first couple of years of the plan, with the outer years being more conceptual. And since we bring this to your approval every year, so those details on the outer years get updated every year. But basically, the plan provides a balance between the regulatory needs, so things we have to comply with, while maintaining our assets in a state of good repair and making sure that we continue to invest in the growth and expansion of the system. So this slide presents the spectrum of the funding sources that comprise the plan. I'm not going to go into detail, but you can see that we have federal, state, local, and other funding, mostly discretionary, but the federal portion makes the bulk of our funding. I think it's important, a couple of things I want to highlight. First of all, Steve talked about this, but all this is happening in the context of a new transportation bill that was approved last November by Congress, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So the plan is important for a couple of reasons, but basically it lays out what the transportation policy is going to be and the funding at the federal level for the next 5 years. And also it provides a robust investment in public transportation, and with that comes some new programs and regulations that we continue to monitor. Also, some assumptions that we made with going into this as far as the revenues go. In the past, we've been very conservative with some of those revenues. For example, Improve Act, where we were assuming no Improve Act money. This year, we're making an assumption of about $3 million of that because we've been successful in applying for those funding and get it. Example of that is the North Nashville Transit Center. So Improve Act is paying for a good portion of the construction of that. Also, with the Metro local money, in the past few years, the capital spending plan has just included matches for WEGO. This fiscal year 2022 adopted CSP included about $30 million for WEGO. So we're making an assumption about $15 million each of the year of the plan in local funding for Metro. And then there's other discretionary funding sources that we continue to apply for.
Felix, if I could just jump in for one second on your Metro piece, I just want to underscore how important that is, particularly as we have to start returning our federal sources back into the operating budget. So we had a good result this past year through the capital spending plan for Metro, just a little over $30 million. For the upcoming year, there is an expectation there will be a capital spending plan in the fall. And our target for that to do our grant matches, our state of good repair projects as outlined in this plan, as well as some of what I'll call the low-hanging fruit on in motion. So things like more transit centers, more stop, and et cetera, not up to the level of the bus rapid transit Murfreesboro Pike, we'll be looking for about $38 million.
And with some of the discretionary opportunities, we continue to monitor that. We've been very successful. Kudos to Billy Higgins in our group who does a lot of the heavy lifting. But we've been able to secure some of that funding to help supplement some of this funding. In terms of the funding projections, at the end of the plan, we expect to have a positive balance of $60.7 million to roll over to the fiscal year 28 when we have the next plan. But with a big caveat here again, as I mentioned, with the Metro money, we expect to have $50 million every year. So that's over the life of the plan, $75 million. Should something happen with that funding or does not materialize, we'll have to reassess and make some decisions as far as which projects to prioritize, but we'll always be giving priority to those projects that are related to safety, regulatory, and state of good repair. Also, this picture doesn't include those big expansion projects outlined in the Metro Transportation Plan, like the Murfreesboro Pike BRT or expansion of Wiggle Star improvements. We have basically 5 main groups where we group our projects, and you can see those laid out here. Safety regulatory, those are required and related to safety or by law, so we have to comply. Steve talked about the preventive maintenance transfer. So we transfer 5307 capital dollars for the preventive maintenance operations and ADA needs. So this amount we look at every year depending on the needs, and we've been covering that with COVID relief money. State of good repair, making sure that everything is safe, it's efficient, working in properly state of good repair. Business improvements help us with the delivery of our services to the customers. And in motion, service expansion is just related to the recommendations from the in-motion plan as far as growing the system. We have 2 charts. Both charts illustrate the same. The first one at the top is just about for the first year of the plan, that's fiscal year 2023. The one at the bottom is just for the all the 5 years of the plan. And they're very similar. It just shows you the distribution of funding between those buckets for the plan. But the main difference you'll notice is the PM transfer. As I mentioned, we're using COVID relief money this year, but from fiscal year 2024 forward, we will be going back to transferring that money. So that's upwards from 21 million or so a year. And last 2 slides, I'm just going to highlight a couple of the projects that we have for fiscal year 23. Under safety and regulatory, we have bus stop lighting. So this is exciting. These are standalone light installations at stops that do not have a shelter. So it adds another layer of security and safety for our riders. It has a push button where the rider presses and activates the light. So it's only used when it's needed. It also comes with a small seat that can be accommodated as well. So another project under this area is the Transit Security Consultant Services. We're bringing experts in security, basically, but more important with experience in transit to look at our practices and our environment and make recommendations. This is important, especially as we continue to grow with new facilities. Under capitalization, this includes the leases for the North Nashville Transit Center. Not only what we pay for the developer side, the developer for the site, but also the outbound station across the street that we pay the lease for with the church. And under state of good repair, fleet replacement, you heard a lot of it from Carl. I won't get into details on that. In terms of the facility, we have some needs for our main facilities at Nestor for roof repair, replacement, pavement repairs, backflow relocation, and for Central and Myatt, some HVAC replacements. Stop amenities, that's just replacing the shelters that are beyond their useful life. We have a couple interesting projects under business improvements. That first one is to make sure that we have an automated process for how we park the buses at the lot at Nestor, so the operators can access them quickly, improve the pull-in and pull-out process, and make it more efficient. And also some vehicle tracking around Central. This will enhance the GPS signal to make sure that we have a better way to monitor the buses and account for schedule and buses departures and arrivals. And then zero emission fleet plan. This is related to the new transportation bill, as I mentioned. If there's some grant programs that will require that we have a zero emission fleet plan if we want to go for that funding, including bus and bus facilities and the low or no emission program. So this is going to help us to understand what challenges we have to be able to make that transition should we go down that path in the future. In terms of emotion, we have fleet expansion related to Better Bus, as Steve talked about. In terms of the shelters, this is going to be identifying new locations that need shelters, or those that have smaller shelters that need to be bigger because of the amount of boardings that we're seeing. And transit centers, not so much for construction, but to do all the legwork leading to construction, like design, environmental work, appraisals, and things of that nature. And last project, very exciting. I know Justin in our group will be excited to see this happening in the plan. But this is a partnership for installation of B-cycle stations at transit centers. Every time we talk about transit centers, we talk about them not just a transit center, but this is an opportunity to improve access to transit and have better connections to other modes of transportation. So we will acquire the docking stations and the electric bikes, and B-cycle will do the installation and maintenance of those at transit centers. We're going to start with Hillsborough and then the future North Nashville transit centers, but it's something that we wanted to include in all of those facilities moving forward in the future. This is my last slide. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but if not, the request is for the board to approve the fiscal years 2023 through 2027 capital investment plan as presented.
Want to talk about it?
Very well done. Very, very well done. It brings to mind the way you do is incredibly complex, especially in regard to grant funding and over how many years and for what projects that you can use them for, et cetera. And it honestly makes me feel like it would be a good idea, I should say. At some point, it may be helpful to hear like a mini presentation on how you get federal, state, local grants, because I think when you don't understand how federal grants and government grants in general operate, and I do have a little bit of a background in that, but not to this level at all, it sort of sounds like WECO just has sort of 42 million that we can do whatever we want with, and therefore it's easier to take some of our money because we have money at our disposal. I think there is a lot of misunderstanding in this particular area. And so, you know, I thank you for the level of detail, you know, that you put in this report. And if you might think about, that would be something, honestly, that would be a really good presentation for perhaps staff at the mayor's office and the council as well. Because I think sometimes it is hard when you see numbers like that, and to see how, I would have thought that was a lot of money until I heard what a bus cost. But think about it. I mean, I don't got $1 million, right? I mean, and so I appreciate this level of detail, and I appreciate that presentation, and I'm grateful that we did go to the consent format so that we can, so that we can. Well, yes, but no, so that we can really, you know, hear this through. So thank you. Even if you have read it, that was very helpful.
Maybe this is an example of one of those quarterly kind of information sessions that we can sort of hold for ourselves and the communities. Could be a good example of that.
That would be wonderful. Absolutely, absolutely.
Could be. Any other thoughts, questions of Felix? Great report.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I did read it.
I hope you found that informational and easy to read.
Well, I think it serves as a guide for us too. So we might be reminded often to go back to it, maybe when you start sharing something about a project or someone else does. I think it's it'll be a very good reference tool going forward. So
Absolutely.
Thank you for doing that. Anything else?
I just want to echo, thank you for the thorough, diligent, and strong report for the capital plan projects from now through 2027. So appreciate that, Felix.
And with that, Mary, does the committee have a recommendation?
The committee does have a recommendation to the board to formally adopt this attached and now reviewed fiscal year 2023 to 2027 capital investment plan.
With that being the recommendation of the committee not requiring a second, is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we have a capital investment plan. Thank you very much, Felix, and all your staff that work so diligently on this. So I think that might conclude your report, the NICE committee. I think so.
That does conclude the report.
Thank you so much. Mr. Bland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Both in the interest of the agenda and knowing we have other special guests in the room that we want to get to during your report, I'll try to make this as brief as possible. First of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't say it's nice to see John and Miriam back in the fold. You know, we knew that they couldn't disappear forever, so really appreciate them being here. Miriam, you're like a bad penny, but we love you. Following up the board governance workshop that we did back in May, I guess, I did speak with Doug Eady earlier in the week. He's going to have a draft outline for the steering committee to take up. So we expect to be scheduling that group to have some conversations sometime in July, Margaret, for next steps on that. So there was a lot to unpack out of that session. A few items with respect to the North Nashville Transit Center. We have our construction bid documents out on the street, and bids should be received by the middle of July. So we're anticipating an August board award. We're also out to bid for proposals for art curation at the center. You know, there are a lot of concepts for how we integrate different aspects of community art. So we're actually soliciting an expert to help us with that. Many thanks to Rita. That was a project of passion for her. So I think that that's going to serve us well. Also, it was a busy month for WeGo at Metro Council this month, which usually I would call a bad thing. You kind of want to fly under the radar a little bit. But two of the specific items were the ordinances were introduced for, after this board recommended, the renaming of WeGo Central after Elizabeth Duff, and the naming of the new North Nashville Transit Center after Rip Patton. Those ordinances were introduced and passed on first reading. They now referred out to committee, go through second reading, et cetera, before they're ultimately adopted. And we were very pleased and proud that council members Swara, O'Connell, Porterfield, Stiles, Toombs, Vercher, Gamble, and Taylor all co-sponsored the legislation. So particularly great to have the council members who are in the home districts of those facilities to co-sponsor. We talked ad nauseum about the operating budget, so I won't talk about that, any additional. But the absolutely most crucial, most important action that the Metro Council took up on Tuesday night out of whatever 200 items they had on their agenda was we are blessed to have Ms. Gail Carr-Williams on for another 5-year term. You all have been through the process, so you know it's a very small committee room. And once Gail went in, Eric Byer and I were blocking the door so she couldn't get back.
I tried to slip away here and there, but somebody kept bringing me in, right?
The next thing I'd report on, we continue to be heavily involved with NDOT, the Mayor's Office, Metro Planning on the mobility planning associated with the East Bank developments and things that go on over there. So that continues to be a very productive conversation. Also very heavily involved with NDOT. They are continuing on the Connect Downtown Mobility Study. And we have a meeting with a whole bunch of our staff in planning, operations, safety with a consultant on transit flow and potential transit priority corridors. Do have some good news to report, additional good news on the transit center front. Again, talking about the federal funding and all those grant sources. We were notified this month by TDOT that we've been awarded a $3.2 million congestion management air quality grant to apply toward our ultimate Hickory Hollow transit center. So the work down there continues. And I also want to point out with respect to that facility, we're working in tandem with Metro Planning on their overall global mall revitalization study, the revitalization of that particular part of the county. We're partnering with them on that. And specifically, I want to thank and acknowledge the efforts of Hannah Schaefer on our planning staff, who's really spearheading our efforts, including participating on Metro Planning's consultant selection team. I want to thank Renuka, Gail, Mayor Cooper, and everybody who came out for WeGocation, the WeGocation kickoff event. Sorry, I missed it, but I'm glad Dr. Wright is gone. Because I was exposed to COVID, I thought it best. I thought it best that I minimize my public engagement. I did touch base with Chair Williams beforehand, and as expected, she adamantly suggested that I just stay the hell away. But I want to thank everybody for participating, and it's a great program. If you're not familiar, please check into it. I've actually had two of my friends in my neighborhood say they were planning to take advantage this weekend, one to go to the Frisk Museum and one to go to the zoo. So awesome program. Thanks to Renuka and the entire marketing communications team for putting that together. I also wanted to point out, John was talking about during his remarks, the 52 service and Geodis Park. One of the projects that Trey's actively working on with NDOT is finally getting our darn fairground station built, and we think we're making some headway in that arena. At least we have a path forward. So I have every confidence that by next soccer season, we should have a facility up there. Finally, I'll close. I always update you on the RTA side, even though you don't have necessarily direct responsibility. We'd reported previously that Gray Line was operating with some of the same staffing shortages that we were, so we had held back on some of the service restoration. Through Andy's effort, Gabe Burgess, and the Gray Line folks, they were able to put some of that service back, not all of it, but we are putting additional trips into, I think, Andy, July 5th, and that's the Clarksville, which routes is it?
The 82, 95, the Dixon, Gallatin, and Clarksville, I think it was.
So Dixon County, Sumner County, and Montgomery County quarters.
Thank you.
And then I reported earlier that under Denise's leadership, we were out for proposals for a future visioning study of the WeGo Star. As disappointing maybe as the real estate was in lack of proposals, she more than made up for it on the WeGo Star. 7 firms proposed. When she told me that, I said, can you remind me, am I on that selection committee? She said, no, do you want to be? And I'm like, absolutely not. I just wanted to make sure that I was not. So, Madam Chair, unless there are any questions, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you very much, Steve. I don't have any questions. Anyone have any questions or comments to Steve? Steve, you've been hanging down in Metro Council. I'm certainly proud of you. I don't have much for comments because I really want to get to a really exciting time, like something that I'm just really excited about. But in reference to my being reappointed, I'm honored, I'm pleased that the mayor, Metro Council, most particularly you all and my colleagues on this board will provide me an opportunity to continue to serve in this space and also an opportunity to continue to serve Nashville. It's truly my honor, especially at this very transformational time in Nashville, in transit, in the world, and how all of us are living our lives a little bit differently than maybe we thought we'd be living our lives right now. And I know how important transit is in these times. So I'm really grateful. I'm grateful that you all had confidence in my leadership. It means a lot. And I promise to continue to serve you all with my advocacy and best practices for good board governance. But as a bonus, and I tell you this all the time, and I tell you this because I want you to know that I'm truly committed. I'm also very proud to serve and honor my dear dad. He was that driver in Detroit for over 40 years. And it is his legacy that I live. And I know he's smiling down like, there she goes, keeping it going for me. And I'm proud to do that for him. And I'm proud to do that on behalf of other drivers every day who work hard to keep our citizens safe and to keep our citizens to and from where they need to be every single day. It's those people that we work for every day. So I'm really grateful. I'm gonna tell you though, you all know how I feel about COVID. Ton of Metro. So y'all must know that I love y'all. That little room, whoo. I was like, oh, God, can this go just a little bit faster? But it was good, but it was worth it because, you know, I get to do this for another 5 years and I'm grateful. So thank you. Budget, awesome. All of the work that we're doing today, and I'm really excited about that consent agenda. I think that's gonna serve us really well, and it's gonna allow our governance to get tighter and better and more informed. So I'm excited about that. And Rita and Eric, thank you very much for being down at Metro Council with me as well. And Steve, thank you for being there and all the support. So, speaking of operators and drivers, Nick, how about I turn the rest of this over to you so we can do some honoring today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You are welcome.
Glad to have you on board again for another 5 years. Hopefully 10 or 20. But I will leave
I didn't tell you how old I am.
It's gonna match your father's tenure.
I don't know, that's gonna happen. Be like crawling in here.
Right, I know. Other board members.
Oh, you know?
No, I'm kidding. I'm so kidding. And our executive team, thank you so much for the time and space amidst this crowded agenda to do this. The Safety Department has the distinct honor of presenting these fine bus operators with an award in recognition of June as National Safety Month. I really want to take a little bit of time as I go through this next sentence for you to kind of pause and reflect on this, but these operators to my right have 10, 15, or 20 years of service with no preventable accidents. I started here at WeGo as a bus operator, and let me tell you the significance of this is I barely screeched through 5 months without tapping something. So to make it 10, 15, or 20 years without a preventable accident is extraordinary, and I take the approach often as I take my cues from Steve as our fearless leader in this organization, that our bus operators are our greatest asset. Besides buses, and so it is significant to me today, to the team, for us to be able to present to you all these awards and working on some other stuff to do. We have additional 32 operators with 1 to 5 years of service without preventable accidents. We'll celebrate them internally, but we just wanted to make sure we did something special for you all. So I'd like to ask Earl Rhodes, our safety manager, and Bobby Irvine, the safety supervisor, to come forward as they will hand our safety pins out to these distinguished bus operators. And at the end, if you really don't mind, I'd like to do something a bit out of the ordinary and give them a standing ovation at the end. So let's honor them individually and then collectively.
Next group are 15 years, less than 20 years. Mr. Adriel Treese Springer. Ms. Priscilla Bacchus. Priscilla was also featured with Renuka in
in an article about being the nicest bus driver, so.
Now, there was also another one that would have been in this 15-year group, Mr. Dbe Program. He's been out on workers' comp and was not able to make it. But one other thing I'd like to add is Mr. Tree, Mr. Barkers, and Mr. Starkey. Really proud of these guys because they came out of yours truly.
If we could have all of y'all join Mr. Rose and Mr. Bobby, and also I'd like to welcome Chelsea Searcy down as part of our safety team. Chelsea is our new safety program and workers' comp manager. She's been doing an outstanding job with us. So Chelsea, if you will come down and join the team. I know, so off kilter. She wasn't prepared for this, but I wanted to do it anyway. And if we could really stand and give these folks a standing ovation for their service. Hold on. Y'all trying to leave me out. Let me get one. Hold on.
Hey, Earl, now that we're coming out of post-pandemic, is this our rodeo team?
These guys' name will be on. Matter of fact, Tree is a rodeo champion. He's run the state rodeo several times.
Madam Chair, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful presentation. And to all of you, congratulations and thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anything else from anyone else? Hearing nothing else, then I will move for adjournment. We are adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.